Integrative Conservation webinar series. Today we have a very special guest that we'll introduce a bit later. So then before going to our guest for today, let me just give a bit of housekeeping notices. So first, you know that this webinar series is is hosted by Integrative Conservation, the relatively new journal by the Extension Banana Tropical Botanical Garden. Is a global journal on conservation science. And then you know that you can access it on the website. We just published the June issue. This is our 7th issue published so far. So we have already 2 years of publication. Please go there and check. This is a global journal addressing global issues, accepting also case studies, including all kind of taxa and all kind of biomes, geographies at any kind of biological organization. It's an open access journal, free to read, free to publish by now, double blind peer review, and we very much welcome different format of papers, from opinion pieces to reviews to research and to policy and practice. We have several calls for ongoing special issues, one on snow leopards, that the deadline will finish in September. We have an online call for papers on environmental education with a focus in China. And we have a special issue on current and emerging conservation issues in Africa. So if you're interested in contributing to these issues, you can go to our website and check about the call for papers. If you are interested in guest editing a special issue, or you have any suggestion on topics that are worth to put together as a special section, please contact us. We're happy to discuss. You can follow us on X and other social media. And as you know, we do this webinar series once a month. And we have very distinguished speakers, and all our webinars are recorded. And if there's no technical problem and the speaker consents, we upload them into YouTube and Bilibili, so then you can still go back in time and watch them later. So then you can scan this QR code and access our website and other resources. So without any further delay, I will go to present our speaker today. Our speaker is Professor Rodrigo Medellin from Mexico, from the UNAM, Universidad Autónoma Nacional de Mexico. Rodrigo is a very distinguished professor. He has a long history studying especially mammals in Mexico and many other countries. So he runs projects, I think, in around 16 countries at the moment. And he has supervised, I think, over 60 PhD theses. He has published over 300 scientific articles. And his work has been mainly on bat conservation, bat plant interactions, but also on large carnivores and other endangered mammals. And he has played a big role connecting people, so that he has launched the global South bats, and then also the global South cats is in the process, I believe, or I don't know if it's already launched. Yep. Rodrigo has been the former president of the Society for Conservation Biology, and he's the co-chair of the bat specialist group in IUCN, and he has been advising to the Mexican government since around 2000 in different issues about the biodiversity. He is one of the most accomplished conservation scientists, and we are very lucky to have him today. So today he's going to talk about how to do conservation science, implement it, and not that trying. So then, Rodrigo, without any other delay, the floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, Rodrigo, you will see him a bit dark because he's very kindly has agreed to talk to us from a remote cabin in Sierra Madre, Eastern Sierra Madre in the field in Mexico. So that he's in a place with very little electricity. So then thank you, Rodrigo, for the efforts. And also, Rodrigo is part of the Integrative Conservation Editorial Board. So then, yeah, thank you very much, and all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ames. And thanks a lot for the invitation to Integrative Conservation fascinating, exciting new journal with new visions, with new ideas. And we really need this kind of innovation in the context of publishing our work. Um, what I thought I was going to do today is to share with you some of the lessons that I have learned over the past 40 years that I've been working on conservation. And that is why I'm going to share my screen, calling it now, the title of the seminar, the title of my talk is there. How to do conservation science, implement it and not die trying. And I don't want to be pretentious, and I want to voids, lots of empty spaces where we didn't even know if we had jaguars there. So then in 2017, I did it again, and look at the horrible surprise that we found from one or two subpopulations that we had only in 2002. In 2017, we had 34 subpopulations in the continent. You can see all of the fragmented populations here, and all of them, except for one, all of the 34, meaning 33 subpopulations, are either endangered or critically endangered according to IUCN, and there is only one population, the Amazon basin population, that is least concern. But we cannot operate on these conditions in which only one population is safe, because that amounts to just having all your eggs in one basket. You cannot have that. We have to counter that and make sure that we can recover those populations that are endangered or critically endangered. So that is when we started working the National Jaguar Project with the Mexican Ministry of the Environment, with the objective to ensure the future of viable jaguar populations in Mexico, and with several lines of actions. I am going to talk about some of these lines of action, but not about all of them. So in 2006, something happened in my life that is like a dream come true to any conservation biologist. Somebody opened the door of Mr. Carlos Slim, the richest Mexican in the world and one of the top 10 richest people in the world. He owns cell phones of about 40% of the world, and he's really, really committed to conservation of jaguars. He happens to like jaguars, and somebody introduced him to me. So I told him that Mexico could be the first country in the world to have a nationwide estimate of how many jaguars do we have in this country. To do that, we had to determine a standardized, replicable method that would be applied by all of the jaguar experts that we have all across the country, from northern Mexico to southern Mexico, and select the initial national jaguar census sites. This is, of course, a combination of collaborations between government, academia, NGOs, and the public in this Jaguar Recovery Subcommittee. The funds come from the government, but also from private funds like Mr. Carlos Slim. So then this is the protocol that we came up with. This is about 81 square kilometers here. We divide them into 3 by 3 kilometers, as you can see here, 3 by 3 kilometers. In each of these 3 by 3 kilometer squares, we take 3 stations in which we are going to deploy camera traps. Half of these camera trap stations are double camera traps, one on each side of the trail, so that we get both sides of the jaguar. And we have the wonderful opportunity that in jaguars and in leopards and in no leopards and in tigers, the blotches and the lines and the spots of the animal are absolutely unique to one individual. So we can actually count the number of jaguars that are in there. In addition, in each of these 3 by 3, we have these little squares that are 600 meters by 100 meters that are only geared towards documenting the relative abundance of the jaguar prey in the area. You know, from deer to wild pigs to armadillos to any small animal that is part of the diet of the jaguar. Okay. So what you see here in blue are the first round, the top priority areas in which we did the National Jaguar Census. As you can see, between the blue and the green that we did it, in the yellow that we did in the following year, we are covering pretty much all of the areas where we have jaguars today, okay? So then the results of the National Jaguar Census showed that we do have several minimum viable populations from extreme northern Mexico to extreme southern Mexico. And we actually found surprisingly large populations in regions that are not your typical ecosystem that you would find jaguars in. This is subtropical dry areas, and still the jaguars are there in extreme northern Mexico. But yes, of course, the largest populations of jaguars are in the extreme south of Mexico, the rainforest areas, and those populations are connected to our neighboring country of Guatemala and our neighboring country of Belize. So the estimated number of jaguars in Mexico that we got in those years from 2007 to 2011 is 3,800 jaguars, which is a big sigh of relief, right? I mean, we have at least a number of jaguars that we can still work with for the conservation of the species. However, and this is without any basis, we don't have any basis to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I estimate, my own estimation is that those 3,800 represent about 20% of the jaguars that were living in Mexico 60 years ago. That means that we cannot lose a single jaguar more. We have to keep them in place. We have to launch a series of strategies to make sure that the jaguars are safe. And of course, we have to identify the main threat, and guess what the main threat, and you people in Asia and any other person that may be listening to this seminar, you will see that the main threat to the big cats is always hunting. It's always the hunt of the cattle ranchers that want to revenge from the cat taking some cattle or some sheep or some goats, and then they go and kill the jaguar. That is the main threat that we face with jaguar across the continent. So we took an important step forward together, hand in hand with the federal government. We put together a protocol of attention to conflicts with wild cats by cattle depredation. And in this case, what is it that we're doing? This program of conflict resolution considers that we have to monitor the population of jaguars and of their prey, and work hand in hand with the landowners and tell the landowners, okay, my friend, if you want to join this monitoring of populations of jaguars and the program of conflict resolution, you are going to be responsible for stopping all hunts. You're not going to allow any hunt of deer or wild pigs or any other animal that is in the diet of the jaguar, okay? If you do that and you do not kill any jaguars and still the jaguar attack some of your cattle, then the government and the university is going to come and pay you the price, the cost of the cattle that you lost in that year, etc. But you have to be co-responsible with the government, etc., so that you do not promote hunting in your land. So the landowners share the responsibility to keep enough prey for jaguars so that jaguars can have their natural prey. We cannot expect that if the jaguars are seeing that their prey is disappearing, that they're not going to attack my cattle. Of course, they're going to attack the cattle if they don't have their natural prey available. So this has actually worked very well. And we're also working on education on cattle management. And some of you may know one of my former students, Dr. Antonio de la Torre, who has been working on educating the ranchers on how to manage the cattle so that the jaguar does not attack as many cattle heads. This is because the jaguar is not big enough. It's not like your tiger, and your tiger is big enough to kill an adult cow. Our jaguar is not big enough to kill an adult cow. The jaguars are going to only attack cows that are maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 months old, and that's it. That is it. Once the cattle has reached an age of 5 or 6 months, they are beyond the window of opportunity of a jaguar attacking them. But if the cattle ranchers keep their cows pregnant every month of the year and giving birth every month of the year, there's an endless supply of cows, of baby cows, to the jaguar. So we concentrate the way that the cows are pregnant into 2 or 3 months only. So that concentrates the vulnerability of the cattle to only a few months of the year, and that's it. That is one of the elements on the education on cattle management that we did, and it's working well. And we're also working with the Senate, with the Mexican Senate, to devise a law in which any individual who kills a jaguar will respond to authorities and hopefully set foot in a prison. We need to send a message loud and clear that from now on, we will not tolerate a single jaguar to be killed. Now, if you go to the literature and you see the publications on large cats, you'll see that the largest number of publications are for lion, and then the next one down is for tiger, and then the next one down is for leopard, and then we know less than half that we know about leopards, about jaguars. There's very, very few publications on jaguars. And that means that we cannot wait until we have learned about the jaguar and we have brought this column here up to this level. We cannot do that. We have to act now with what we know now. So we need to extract lessons from the other species, from lions, from leopards, from tigers, from snow leopards, etc. We need to glean lessons of conservation from those species and apply them to the jaguar. So we have an agreement signed with the Kenya Wildlife Service in which we are learning about their efforts to protect jaguars, to protect leopards, and we're incorporating their lessons into our jaguar conservation initiatives in Mexico. So this is now a reality. It's working really well. Let me take you to the rainforest of southern Mexico. This is extreme southern Mexico. What you see, all of this is green, is tropical rainforest. And I am going to go to this area here, which is the Lacandon rainforest, part of the Mayan rainforest. This is the area. What you see in these red lines are the protected areas that are existing right now in that part of the world. It's all tropical rainforest, and there's a lot of tropical rainforest outside the protected areas. You can see here the border between Mexico and Guatemala. This is a river. This is a very broad, very wide river, more than 1 kilometer wide, that divides Mexico from Guatemala, okay? And then the rest of the border is just a line like that, all right? Okay, so it turns out that using radios and GPS radio collars with obtaining information of where the animals are, then we know where the animals are going to be, and that is going to help us learn what is the next step to develop a new protected area. So here you have only four individuals, 2 males in blue, 2 females in red. And remember that this river here is the Mexico-Guatemala border, okay? Right here, this is the Mexico-Guatemala border. This is Mexico, this is Guatemala. Well, I want you to look at this male. This animal here, this is a male that is crossing the river. He's swimming into Guatemala, visiting his Guatemalan girlfriend, and staying 2 or 3 weeks with his Guatemalan girlfriend, and then he's going to swim back to come back to his Mexican girlfriend to avoid his Mexican girlfriend to becoming angry with him. Well, this is exactly the kind of genetic connectivity that we need to make certain that it's going to stay there for the future. So using this kind of data, we came to the government with a proposal of a new protected area that you can see there in red. It is still being considered for definition of a new protected area, but at least we are seeing that there is movement between the 2 countries of jaguars going back and forth. And that is what we need to preserve. Okay, so the next 50 years are going to be absolutely crucial for the fate of the jaguars. The law must be applied to the fullest extent. We need to raise political will and commitment. We need lots of public education. We need to strengthen the cattle insurance program. We need to incorporate lessons from other carnivores, and a lot more research, management, and conservation of critically endangered populations need to take place. But we are along the right track, and we have been able to influence policy and to make changes on the ground, okay? So let's go to the next example, and this is going to be a dramatically different animal and a dramatically different ecosystem. This is the bighorn sheep, one of the biggest wild sheep in the world. And what you see here is the other extreme of Mexico. With a jaguar, we were working in this area down here. With a bighorn sheep, we're working in the extreme north, which is very, very dry. In red, you see here the original historic distribution of this bighorn sheep. And in yellow, you see the range of the species in Mexico in 2000, in the year 2000. What you see here is Tiburon Island, which is the biggest island of Mexico. This is about 125,000 hectares. So it's really, really big area in the Gulf of California, right here, what you see here. So it is part of Mexico. It's the largest island in Mexico, okay? So it turns out that this is the island. You can see it from space. It is 50 kilometers long. It is very, very close to the continent. It's only less than 500 meters from here to here. So really, it's a very, very short distance there. This is Pico Johnson, which is an area where the government in 1975 captured about 20 bighorn sheep and put them in the island, because in those years there were no bighorn sheep in this island. So they took 20 animals from here and put them into the island there. Then that allowed us to model the population growth, because I have been doing helicopter censuses, helicopter surveys in the island to estimate how many bighorn sheep are in that island. So we know for a fact that there was 20 animals in that first arrow in 1975. There was an attempted census on foot in 1980, 87, 88, but that was not very important or very useful at all. And then from this moment on, 1996 on, we started doing helicopter surveys year after year after year. That helped us to calculate the carrying capacity of the island at about 650 bighorn in the island, with what is the largest value of intrinsic rate of natural increase of any bighorn sheep population using the logistic equation up here. So this 0.3 is the highest value of any bighorn sheep population anywhere in the world, all right? So that population is really in very good shape. It so happens that the island is owned by a group of indigenous people called the Seri or Concac. This is an indigenous group that is in terrible shape. There is only 800 Concac left. From those 800, 40% are diabetic. They have a life expectancy of 50 or 55. They have extreme poverty, a lot of drugs among the children, etc. But it turns out that we started this program for management and conservation of bighorn sheep in the island, in that island. We opened the SETI Trust Fund so that any money leaving the trust fund would have to be a check that is signed by 11 elderly SETI people, okay? It is an international, interinstitutional, intersectoral collaboration. And then I started getting in touch with this organization called FNOS, in which it's called the Foundation of the North American Wild Sheep. This is a group of very wealthy people, mostly from the United States, who are interested in hunting bighorn sheep. And they want to make sure that there is enough bighorn in the mountains of all of the west of the United States and the northwest of Mexico, there's enough bighorn sheep for them to go and hunt them. So they invest very heavily on their conservation. And the funds generated from there go directly to the SETI Trust Fund. So then I take the SETI chief and his assistant to the first auction. This is in 1995. And I don't know if there is any hunters in the audience. I am not a hunter myself. But when I was there, I was so surprised by how much the first permit was auctioned in the auction that the Foundation for the North American Wild Sheep does every year. Look at these figures. The first bighorn was sold by $200,000. Then the second one was sold at $195,000. Of course, the city people have never seen this kind of money, and it's only 800 people. So it's really having a very significant impact. From that moment on, the cost, the price of the auction, and it's always only 2 bighorn sheep per year. That's it. Only 2 animals are going to die. From those 650 that we have in the island, it's only going to be 2 that are going to die. 2 very old male like me that are dying every year. Okay, so from then on, the price of the permits have been about $100,000, which is a lot of money for one animal. So this closes the circle of conservation. Conservation is paying for itself. The SETI or CONCAC people are obtaining resources for the community development program. The economic diversification of the SETI is promoted. It's the first time in the last 400 years that the species range is expanding because we are using bighorn from the island to reintroduce them in other areas that you'll see in a minute. And there's a lot of research going on and biodiversity conservation in the island. Good hunts and conservation success are promoting the project. This is the largest bighorn sheep ever hunted with bow and arrow. And that man there paid $200,000 to go and hunt that animal, one very old male. I've been training the SETI people, a group of young SETIs that I started working with in the 90s, in 95, 96, 97, 98, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the technical group that are trained to do all of the surveys, to go on the helicopter, to do vegetation surveys, et cetera. And then we train them to follow the movements of the bighorn sheep, to do the vegetation transects in the island with my students and so on. So last year in May, I went to visit the SETI people, my friends that I trained. Remember that I trained them when they were maybe in their 20s. They are now in their 50s or 60s. And it turns out that each and every one of them has a story of success because their children were able to go to university. There is now in the community doctors and engineers and architects and even biologists who have become biologists because they saw their dad going with me into the helicopter and flying all over the island counting sheep. They love to do that, and they said, oh, I want to do that, Dad. Can I go to university? And because of the money of the bighorn sheep, they were able to go to university. So this is a full success now. And on top of that, we are expanding the range of the bighorn to historical areas. In 2005, we put a new population there. And in 2006, we put another population there, which means that now the bighorn is retaking its original range because of this whole process. So it's a well-rounded example of success in conservation. And the SETIs are in charge of their future. They are in charge of their destiny. They decide what they're going to do with their lives. It's the first time in the history of the SETIs that is actually happening. Let's go to the last example, the lesser long-nosed bat. And you'll see these bats are nectar-feeding bats. They're visiting an agave flower, and that bat thought that I was the flower, and look at the bat trying to hang from my hat. Okay, so this is the star of the show. These bats were endangered or threatened in 1988, in 1993, in Mexico and in the United States. It's a migratory pollinator, and we started the recovery actions in 1994 with a lot of research, environmental education, and conservation actions. Everything I have done in conservation all my life happens in this three-pronged strategy in which we have conservation actions, research, and environmental education working together and feeding back into each other so that we learn about each of the three fields and educate our actions in each of the three fields. This has been very successful in my life, and we continue to do that with this and many other mammals. What we do here, and let's go to the field again. This is an infrared camera with two infrared lights right there. That is going to allow us to see this incredible view. This is from the inside of the cave. I call this picture the arrival. And I want you to please take a look at the bellies of these females. These are all female bats. Only the female bats are migrating, and they are all pregnant. Look at the very heavy bellies of all of the females in the frame, because they're all carrying a baby inside of them. This squeezes 20 years of work into one single slide, in which you can see the different arrows, depending on the color and the size of the arrows, is the size of the population. The size of the population in that particular roost, from thousands to tens of thousands to this one with hundreds of thousands of bats. And you see here that the estimates are very stable from year to year to year to year to year, except in this one, for example, that sometimes it throws 80,000, sometimes it throws 30,000, but it's still a big colony. That is the cave from the outside. This is, look at this ecosystem. This is the driest desert in North America, the Sonoran Desert in extreme northern Mexico. And what you see here is what the infrared cameras are seeing. Look at that. That is the female bats coming out of the cave. They start at 8 p.m. I need to go inside the cave to assess how many babies, what is the reproductive success in that particular year. But I cannot go inside the cave when the females are there during the day, because I would create a major disruption and the females would drop the babies. So I have to wait until the last female comes out at around 11 p.m. or midnight, and then once I'm out, once all of the females are out there, I walk very, very, very carefully inside the cave, and this is what I see. A carpet of babies. The roof of the cave is covered with babies. This is a 1-day-old, 2-day-old babies. So now I want you to think that you are one of those females that left your baby in kindergarten, in your daycare, etc., and you went to work. And then you come back from work and you go to pick up your child and you find this mess. You find these cows. How are you going to find your baby in that mass of babies? So for that, I have this other video. I want you to focus on this particular baby here. When the video starts, the babies are going to be just nonchalantly looking at each other, stretching their wings to one end, stretching their wings to the other side. And then 2 seconds after the video starts, this baby goes absolutely crazy. And you still cannot see the female that is going to be coming from here. And this female is his mother. But the female is coming and smelling this baby, smelling this baby, smelling this baby, smelling this baby, and then going to her baby. The baby is absolutely certain that his mother is back, but the mother is not absolutely certain. So we are now in the process of trying to understand what the hell is going on. How do they recognize each other because of this absolute mess? So here you go. It starts now. The babies are there, stretching their wing. Oh, my mom is back. My mom is finally back. Mom, I'm over here. I'm over here. And then the mother is going and smelling every baby. And then she's not really certain that that is her baby. But then she goes down, and I don't know if she licks the baby or what, but she makes sure that that is indeed her baby. And she lets the baby connect to the nipple. And then the mother lives with her single baby. All of the other babies are there waiting for the mother. But in the process, this baby has found a mother, and the mother leaves with the baby like right there, okay? So this is work in progress. This footage has never seen the light anywhere. So what we're seeing here is research that we need to do to understand what the hell are the babies seeing in that female that they know that that is their mother, and how is the mother connecting to the baby. All of this is work in progress. When you have a population of 200,000, 300,000 females of nectar feeding bats, you should have a landscape that is absolutely different from this. But this is how the vegetation looks outside the cave. There's really nothing for the bats to eat here. These bats in that season, in this season that we are in right now, in July, they are eating the nectar and the pollen of the flowers of the columnar cacti that you see, one here, one here, one here, and one over here, and that's all. When you have a colony of hundreds of thousands of female bats, nectar feeding bats, this is what it should look like, with all of these columnar cacti providing a lot of food for those females. But instead, this is what it looks like. So our next question was, where the hell are they feeding? This is extreme northern Mexico. This is all happening in this circle right here. And when we expand this, enlarge it, then you see the Biosphere Reserve of El Pinacate. This is a protected area. This is a volcano, a very old volcano that ended its eruptions about 9,000 years ago. The cave is in the extreme south of the volcanic field, but when you look for the largest columnar cactus fields, they are here and here. And look at the distances that the bats have to fly from the cave to the nearest columnar cactus concentration. Is 40 kilometers for an animal that is this big, for an animal that weighs 25 to 27 grams only. And to this one is 50 kilometers over there. So are there really bats are going to be able to fly 40 and 50 kilometers to go and feed and then come back and feed their babies in the cave? Well, we're using, again, technology, VHF telemetry radio, a GPS unit, an ultrasonic microphone and recorder, and then we put that on board the bat. With that technology, we have been able to show this. Look at that. Each line is 1 day, the movements of one bat. Each color is one individual bat. So this is different days of several individual bats. This is the, hang on, this is the volcanic shield. The cave is down here. Remember that the columnar cactus fields are over here and over here. And yes, there's others over here and over here. This yellow line here is the Mexico-US border. So, of course, our bats are flying over the Mexico-US border, feeding in the United States, and coming back to the cave. Tell that to Mr. Donald Trump and his wall. Of course, the bats are going and visiting the US and eating in the US and coming back. Of course, they're going to do that. So look at this, the length of this movement is really, really, really far. So all information is pointing at the recovery of the species. Mexico contains 80% of the species range. 18 years of work shows stability or growth, and we have new colonies documented already. There's legal and real protection of the roosts. Education has taken root, and now these bats are protected. Everybody loves these bats in Mexico for the following reason. So in October 23rd in 2013, we announced to the world that this species has recovered from the risk of extinction that it was facing. And all of the media in Mexico and in the world took those good news in conservation. Okay, but now the listing has occurred. We owe it to the donors, we owe it to the species, and we owe it to ourselves because we've been working on this species for 2 decades, and now we finally can say, yay, it has recovered because of our efforts. Okay, now let's shift gears and tell you why these bats are so incredibly important for Mexico and the world, and I hope you will agree with me. This plant is called the agave. And agaves are an incredibly useful plant for Mexico and the world. You have it in China growing in many places. You use it mostly for the fiber in the leaves of the agave. What agaves do is they grow and they accumulate sugar year after year after year after year, and then they invest every last gram of those sugars into one single sexual reproductive event. That means that all of the sugars that they have accumulated over many years that are down here, they're investing in this massive sexual reproduction event. And after they grow this, they're going to have sex once and then they die. Imagine that life. Imagine living for 6, 10, 20, 30 years, depending on the species of agave, and having sex once and then dying. It's an incredible life, really. So if we narrow down this association between bats and agaves, this is what you see. The bats are looking for food and agaves are looking for sex. And that is really not a bad combination as far as I'm concerned. All right. So why is all of this important, my friends? Why is all of this so important? Guess why? Tequila. Tequila comes from agaves, and if there's no bats, there's not going to be any tequila. I hope that you will agree with me that there's a massive, massive importance of these bats because on their survival is the availability of tequila. Look at these statistics of 2022. Over 2.5 billion tons of agave heads were harvested. From that, 650 million liters of tequila were produced. The economy of more than 100.
Recording in progress.
The global tequila market is more like $10 billion. So this is really important for Mexican economy and for the world to have its tequila, right? Okay, so then the problem here is that for more than 100 years, the tequila producers have not allowed a single agave to flower because they have learned that if they harvest the agave before they flower, they maximize the amount of sugar and therefore they maximize the amount of alcohol. So they have not allowed a single agave to flower. And the result is that they're using only the baby agaves that grow under the parent plant, which are clones, which are exact genetic copies of the parent plant to replant their fields. And what that does is that every generation that they do that, they're losing genetic diversity. For more than 100 years, they have done that. Now we know that more than 270 million plants of agave are clones of only 5 individuals. 5 individuals in 270 million plants. So genetic diversity is absolutely zero. And that is the perfect conditions to create a horrible storm that is affecting the tequila industry now. We started working then with the tequila producers, and the mezcal producer is the wild relative of tequila. And we convinced them to allow 5% of the agaves to flower, and that will feed 100 bats in each hectare of agaves. And you harvest the remaining 95% of the agaves, and then you're making your own tequila and mezcal. And the tequila and mezcal that comes from those fields is going to be labeled bat friendly by the University of Mexico with this sticker that you see down here that that goes on the bottle and that tells the consumer this is a bat friendly tequila. So think about that next time you buy a bottle of tequila. In 2016, we launched 300,000 bottles of bat-friendly tequila. You can see the brands there. We have no stake. We don't get any money from them. It's only their commitment, their determination to do things right for agaves and for bats. So what you're seeing here have not happened in over 150 years. This is Mr. Salvador Rosales, owner of one of those brands. He had never seen an agave flowering, and he's one of the first who joined the bat friendly program. And of course, after you see those flowers growing, then along comes the people who harvest the remaining 95%, and that 5% that you see here, we set up mist nets there to make sure whether the bats are actually visiting those flowers or not. And guess what? Of course the bats are visiting the flower. Of course the bats are visiting the flowers. Of course the bats are visiting the flower. They are visiting the flower. They have not forgotten their food source, and that is the round circle in which we're recovering genetic diversity for these incredible plants. This is a love story that National Geographic gave us the cover a few years ago, telling the love story between bats and agaves, and we are the big winners of that because of tequila and because of mezcal. So to wrap it up, I want to tell you the recipe to do science and apply it to conservation, the recipe that I have learned over the past 40 years of doing conservation work. The first lesson that I learned is that we need to get out of our comfort zone. All of us conservation professionals are very comfortable working in our labs, in our classrooms, in our study site, and that's it. And we never set foot outside of that. We never talk to the landowners. We never talk to the neighboring landowners. We never talk to the decision makers. We never talk to the lawmakers, to the government, to authorities. We never talk to anybody. All we do is to do our work, and that's it. Well, it's time for us to really get out of our comfort zone and start learning from other sectors of the world. When you do that, when you get out of your comfort zone, pretty soon, in 2 months or in 3 months, you are going to see that you're comfortable now. In that supposedly uncomfortable area, you have become comfortable. And that is your signal to get out of that comfort zone again and make your comfort zone continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. And that is actually how your universe is going to continue expanding. So that is the first lesson that I learned. The second lesson that I learned is that we have to come down from the ivory tower.
Okay, I think Rodrigo is frozen. Let's wait to see if he can reconnect. Okay, so we apologize for the technical problem. I think Rodrigo is coming back.
I'm
Welcome
back.
back, Rodrigo.
Oof.
Very good, very good. Okay, fantastic.
There's a little bit of a storm out there.
Hmm.
Okay, so what do we do?
Yes, you can just continue on that because you were at the very exciting moment on your
Yeah.
recipe. So then if we can continue.
Exactly. Okay, so I go back. So the next one is again, I don't know where was I cut off, but coming down from the ivory tower in terms of you know, us being doctors and professors and PhDs and so on, and we think we're a different kind of human beings. We're not a different kind of human being, my friends. We are another human being, and that's all we are. So please.
Okay, I'm afraid that we might be having more technical problems.
Oh no, what's happening? Can you see me?
We can hear you now. You can see you now. Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's cross fingers and continue.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna speed it up, and this is actually the next to last slide. So come down from the ivory tower. I already said that. Work the relationship gradually with all of the sectors around you, all of the sectors in your country, all of the sectors that have anything to do with your subject of conservation. And work with all of those other sectors to define the conservation and science agenda. Don't do it by yourself. You cannot come with your own conservation agenda and impose it on a community or on the government or whatever. You have to jointly define what the conservation and science agenda is going to be, or they're not going to feel that they own the conservation agenda. And this is absolutely crucial for your success. Always carry the research, keep in contact with the other sectors. Even here, when I am in the mountains of Eastern Mexico, I am sending them messages on WhatsApp, on email. I'm sending them beautiful pictures of the things that I am seeing, congratulating them for the most amazing work that they've done protecting this incredible forest where I am, and so on. Keep contact with them. They, you know, you have to think that all of these authorities are only listening from us when we have a complaint or we need a piece of paper. Well, make it nicer for them. Show them the animals and the plants that they are committed to protecting. Send them pictures of whatever thing that you love and that you saw, a beautiful flower, a beautiful bird, whatever. Send it to them. It's very, very important to keep in contact and keep good relations with them. And please note that publishing a paper, even if it is in the integrative conservation, is not the end of the work. To paraphrase Sir Winston Churchill, publishing a paper is not the end. Publishing a paper is not even the beginning of the end. Publishing a paper is the end of the beginning. Once you have published the paper, it's your responsibility to go back to those communities, to go back to those decision makers, to go back to those authorities and digest and simplify the lessons that you learned in your paper so that they can adopt it, they can absorb all of these messages and use them in their everyday life and in their conservation programs, in their management programs. It's very important to not say, okay, I published my paper, here's my paper, goodbye. No, that is not the way that things work. You need to sit down with decision makers and with other stakeholders and discuss your findings. Otherwise, your paper is only going to be read by 20 or 30 people, and then nothing is going to happen with your research. Please think about these things. Finally, if you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem, my friends. Going out and doing research is not the solution. You have to have that research relevant for policy. You have to make it into conservation decision making with the landowners, with the authorities, etc. And of course, you cannot ever give up. Yes, yes, yes. Many of my students and friends have said, well, you told me that I should go and look for the local people and look for the authorities, and I knock on their doors and they slam the doors on my face, so I'm not going to go back. Well, you've given up already. And the only loser is you and the biodiversity that you are trying to protect. Keep knocking on those doors. Try different ways of knocking on the doors, being gentle, being kind, being understanding, being nice, expanding your comfort zone and coming down from the ivory tower is absolutely all important for the benefit of the biodiversity that we all love and defend. So if you want to learn more about bats, follow me on Instagram with Batman Medellin right there. And everything I have told you today is really the result of an incredible group of students that I have. They are the ones who do the everyday work everywhere I am in the world. These people are the ones who are doing amazing, amazing work. And I thank them all for this. And I thank you all for your attention. And now I'm ready to answer some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Has been really, really inspiring. I'm very pleased with the final. I mean, the whole business has been really interesting with the 3 examples of success, very different topics, and I'm very happy that you ended up with this message about how it is doing conservation science, especially because our Chinese audience they live in a high pressure environment to publish papers, and there's something that I noticed since I moved to China is that the conservation area, but at least in academia, is very narrow. You have to publish papers. And seems that getting out of there is almost wasting time, engaging with other stakeholders, doing communications, doing many other things is often seen as time you are not working on your papers. And I think it's important to tell to young scholars and to early career researchers that if you want, you have to define what you want to achieve as a professional and as on your life. But if you care about conservation, publishing papers, I like the quote a lot, is just the end of the beginning. So I think that was a very, very important message to send to our audience. So what we will do now is we will have a Q&A. We have around 30 minutes of time for questions. So I will do some questions first to Professor Medellin, and then the audience can type their questions both on Zoom and on CoShare. Rodrigo, just to let you know, on CoShare, we had something around 1,500 people following last time I heard. So then there's a decent crowd following there. And, for my perspective, I had many questions. I like a lot the 3 systems. And I want to start with a question about the bighorn sheep, which I didn't know much about this story. And I found very, very, very effective that method of promoting sustainable hunting with the benefits going to the community and involving the community on both the monitoring to produce the data, to decide the quotas, and to get the benefits and to feel that they are benefiting from conservation. That is really important, right? So I was wondering why the small quota, why to only hunt 2 males per year? Is that to create kind of a scarcity so then people pay more for 2, or is a matter of some demographic parameters?
That's a very interesting question and a great question, Ahimsa. Thank you for that. Let me tell you that, I ran this project from 1995 to 2004, and then I left the SETI team in charge. Every year since then, they come to me with the same question. And they say, why not more? Why can't we kill more? I mean, we have 650 animals. We can for sure take 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 easily. And I go, and this is what you're forgetting, Ahimsa, the law of offer and demand. I keep telling them, okay, guys, if you want to increase the quota to 4, you are going to work twice as much for the same amount of money, because if you have 4, the price is going to come down accordingly. So in the end, you are going to be working 2 times more for the same amount of money. It doesn't really make much sense to work more for the same amount of money because the price is going to come down. What we have done, and we are considering this at this be in the island in next month, is maybe because there's been a lot of complaints about from Mexican hunters that they want to go to that incredible island, but they don't have the money to pay 200,000. So we may be able to add one more hunt only for Mexican citizens. And they're going to be able to pay 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, which is a lot of money for one animal too. But that is hopefully going to win over the support of the Mexican hunters. So that's basically the reason.
Yeah. So basically, this is the Ferrari of the bighorn sheep. So then people have to wait, and it's extremely scarce. And yeah, that's a very smart approach. And looking at the Jaguar project, so then I think it's very good to see that Mexico. First, congratulations for the support from Carlos Slim. I think that is a great achievement in itself. And then so then now you have very good knowledge of the population size, and you know the occupancy and the distribution. So I was wondering, what do you think happened from the early 2000s to the mid 2010s? Do you think there was a real reduction of the range and fragmentation of the populations, or is just that the better data show a more accurate picture of what was happening?
We are pretty confident that we have good data both from 2002 to 2017 coming from all over the world, and it's a variance because you have Paraguayan researchers and Brazilian researchers all over. That's a massive country, and Colombian and Peruvian and Ecuadorian and so on. We are confident that those are real data. The problem is that in those 20 years, the expansion of the agricultural and cattle ranching frontier went crazy all over. It's the expansion of the well, it's called the it's a new model of development in the world that has pushed the limits on all of our topics and all of our ecosystems, and that is what promoted. For example, imagine when the previous president of Brazil was really destroying Brazil. That's exactly what happened in all of the countries, including Mexico. Mexico has lost massive amounts of forests and, of course, of jaguars in those 20 years. So basically, it's the result of the way that the world is developing at this point in time.
You're going back to the roots of politics and alignments with values for conservation and the trade-off with development. Yeah, so then I was thinking, you were saying that there is much less knowledge about jaguars than there is for leopards or for tigers and for lions. And I was thinking how if we had also snow leopards in that graph, probably snow leopards will be the less studied species, also because they live in places with less people. But you know that the very good work is happening with snow leopard. Yeah, so then there's a huge amount of work that has happened in the last 10, 15 years. The thing is, we are crossing a tipping point in which I think we are accumulating knowledge that allows to do much better monitoring, to do much better decision making in terms of management, and allows to think of a better, more hope in order to do kind of a science-based conservation of these kind of species. And I would very much like to encourage you discussing with people here in China, in Central Asia, to exchange experiences, to learn from each other. And also, again, I just came from Sri Lanka, which has a very rich population of leopards, island wild decision leopards. So I think it's so important to transfer, the knowledge on what is working, what kind of models work, because much of this work is not technically very difficult. It's logistically difficult, it's expensive, it requires a lot of engagement with stakeholders and learning what has worked and what hasn't worked and thinking about what is needed locally. It's a very, very important step. And I think it will be really good to have exchange between you and people in this part of the world.
Well, this is exactly the vision and the philosophy of the Global South CATS network. We cannot be reinventing the wheel by ourselves. We have to learn from each other. We have to join forces. Many of you in China and in other Asian countries have faced the same problems than we did, and you have come up with another solution. This is exactly what we have not been able to do all along, ever since we started working on conservation. And no offense, I hope you take no offense, Ahimsa, on this, but it has been mostly people from the US or from Europe coming to our countries and telling us how to do things without the possibility of us in the Global South, Africa, Asia, Latin America, learning from each other, connecting to each other, bringing each other together and learning together. So the Global South CATS is exactly that. We are having our first meeting of the very, very tiny steering committee in the Pantanal in Brazil in October, and we're going to have people from Asia, you're going to have people from Africa coming to see jaguars and discussing jaguars, lions, leopards, snow leopards, and tigers. So little by little, this philosophy of really connecting and empowering people from all over the Global South is going to win over all of our work. That's the best way for me that I can see to learn from each other and to be successful in the conservation of these endangered animals.
Yes, it's very exciting to hear about the global South CATS. I totally agree with what you're saying about the importance of the South to South communication and having capacity inside, and it has to be local capacity, the one that will make the difference. So then I'm not going to take more of your time. I'm going to pass to the floor for questions. So then again, audience, if you want to formulate any question, just type it in the chat box, either on Zoom or co-share, and then I will read them for Rodrigo. When you make a question, if possible, please just tell your name, who you are and your institution, so then we have an idea of where you come from. So we have one anonymous question that says, all world bat pollinators and new world bat pollinators all have long tongues. Is there a convergence relationship between them?
There is a convergent relationship, but they are extremely different, separated evolutionarily. They split out maybe 30 million years ago. Our nectar-feeding bats are about this size. Your nectar-feeding bats in Asia are about this size, 4 or 5 times bigger. There is some smaller ones as well, but you probably know very well. I mean, this is something that I do in my conservation biology courses. I talk about durian. I mean, Thailand alone gets $270 million every year of durian industry, and every durian is a result of a nectar feeding bat in those areas in Asia, in Southeast Asia, that are visiting the flowers. So you have your own examples of this incredible success. So what I think is bring all of these examples of nectar feeding bats benefiting humans and ecosystems in Southeast Asia, and nectar feeding bats benefiting ecosystems and humans in the American continent. But there's a lot more to say along those lines.
That's a very good example. So just for the Chinese audience, or just for you, Rodrigo, to know, there's a boom right now on durian demand in China. So then the Chinese consumers are kind of learning about durian, and they like it a lot. So that's going to bring big changes in the durian production, with some negative impacts on site, because there will be kind of clear of land and to produce more durians. But I think it's very important to highlight this, that the durian is bad pollinated, and it is a very beautiful system. It's also elephant dispersed and bear dispersed. So then it's a very interesting plant in terms of plant-animal interactions.
Yeah.
Then we have one question from Baba Musa, is one of our postdocs here in XTVG. Great and fascinating presentation. Thank you, Professor Rodrigo, Medellin. Talking about getting out of your comfort zones to explore different perspectives of conservation strategies, how do we get out of our comfort zones? Any practical clues, especially for early career researchers who may not have the independence to making certain critical research decisions?
Excellent question, Baba. Very good question. What I can tell you is each and every one of us is going to find the best way to get out of your comfort zone. But you have to start by taking baby steps, getting out of your comfort zone and starting to talk to the director of wildlife in your province or the landowner in the next plot where you are working, or somebody who may benefit from your work, but you never thought that they may benefit from the work that you're doing. I have no idea what is the line of work that you're invested in, Baba, but I'm sure that if you start thinking, what is the relevance of your work and who is the actual beneficiary of the work, reach out to them and start talking to them little by little, one step after another. I mean, I remember when I started this, I went to the director of the Wildlife Service in Mexico, and I told her that I wanted to work on all of the other mammals, not bats, in this tropical rainforest, the Lacandona. And she said, no, because your work is absolutely useless for the local people, et cetera, et cetera. So here I am with all the patience in the world, trying to explain to this person the benefits of knowing how the Lacandon Indians' use of land system was useful for conservation, and that we needed to learn from them to benefit, to improve our management plans. But this is just one example, Baba. You are going to find your own ways of getting out of your comfort zone. Make it slow at the beginning, but as you will see, I put my hand in the fire for this. Once you're out of your comfort zone, you're going to enjoy it so much that you're going to get out again and again and again and again. And I, at my 66 years of age right now, continue to make my comfort zone grow and expand into different realms, different sectors.
Thank you, Rodrigo. And then we have a question from Pratibha Khatri, which is also one of our students. Thank you, Rodrigo, for a very interesting presentation. I have two questions related to the bighorn sheep. One, what was the reason for the reintroduction, or maybe introduction, I don't know if there was any previous presence there, of bighorn sheep in the island, in Tiburon Island? I like the name of the island.
Yeah.
And currently, there is a huge decrease in the habitat of bighorn sheep. Are there any efforts going on for the reintroduction of them in the previous habitats?
Very interesting question, and that gives me the opportunity to explain that supposed introduction. When that happened in 1975, and even when I started working in the island in 1995, we all assumed that the bighorn was actually an exotic invasive species in the island. There is a supposedly endemic subspecies of deer in the island. It's supposedly endemic because when we started doing the helicopter surveys, we saw them swimming those 500 meters from the continent to the island. So they're not endemic at all. But then what happened was that in 2005, some researchers from the University of Arizona went to the island to dig into this incredibly fascinating natural history concept, which is we have these rats, a rat this big, we call them pack rats. These pack rats build nests that can be 1.5 meters high. And every generation of pack rats adds to that nest, finding crazy things that they seem to like. It may be a branch, it may be an old fruit. In recent years, it may be a piece of plastic, or it may be a piece of metal. And they bring it there. And researchers in North America have learned that if you dig into those nests, you start finding clues of how the ecosystem has changed over thousands of years, because all of these nests have been active for thousands of years. Well, we were lucky enough that in 2004, these researchers in Tiburon Island, digging into this nest, started finding bones of bighorn sheep that were about 1,000 years old. So it's only 1,000 years old that the bighorn disappeared from the island, and they were actually reintroduced, not introduced. Fantastic.
Yeah, because I guess if there was no sign of native presence, you would have to think about whether you want to.
Exactly.
Well, I'm, yeah. So then I'm very much into functional ecology and thinking about processes, and sometimes it might not be the same species, but it depends on what you want to achieve in terms of the ecosystem management. Okay, so then do we have any other question from co-share?
Yeah, well, the other question from
sorry,
was,
yeah.
There was a huge decrease in the habitat of bighorn sheep. Not in Mexico. In Mexico, the habitat is pretty stable. And not only that, we have in the mountains directly north from where I am right here, we have a big influx of an exotic invasive from Africa called the Barbary sheep. And they brought the Barbary sheep to Texas to hunt them, because you know that in Texas they have more exotics than anywhere else in the world. They have giraffes, they have rhinos, they have elands, they have wildebeest, they have buffalo. You can go hunt buffalo in Texas. I don't know, ask them. But some of those Barbary sheep escaped from the United States and started colonizing the mountains of the north of Mexico. What that did was that the Barbary sheep are extremely resistant to virtually any disease, any wildlife disease. And the bighorn are very sensitive to any wildlife disease, so much so that one contact, nose to nose, between a Barbary sheep and a bighorn sheep destroys the entire population of bighorn sheep. So when we started reintroducing them in those two places where I showed you in the map, I told them, okay, guys, what we need to do is to make absolutely certain that there is zero bighorn sheep there. And then they started removing the bighorn sheep, because one hunt of the Barbary sheep, one hunt of Barbary sheep sells for about $5,000, whereas one direct hunt of bighorn sheep sells between $20,000 and $60,000. So there's no point for them to have Barbary sheep. So they've been killing Barbary sheep all over the mountains of northern Mexico and removing them, and that is why the ecosystem in Mexico for bighorn sheep is in very good shape.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Sorry, a bit off topic. The jaguar has been expanding into the United States. I saw some news that there were jaguars coming to Texas and some other states. Is that correct?
No. What happens is that they have captive jaguars, and there were jaguars there. As recently as the 1800s, there were jaguars in Louisiana, in Texas, in New Mexico, and in Arizona. Today, I told you a lie, because I told you that Mexico is the only country in the world who has an estimate of how many jaguars do we have. Because the other country that knows how many jaguars are there is the United States. They have one jaguar, exactly one jaguar. And over the past 25 years, they have had one very old male that has dispersed from the populations in northern Mexico across the border and establishing themselves in Arizona and New Mexico, which is not habitat for jaguars, but they are really excited and crazy, happy that they have one very old male. But they have not had a female for the past at least 50 years. There's really no chance that they're going to have a sustainable population of jaguars in the United States. Above and beyond that, please remember that Donald Trump built this wall. And I have a student, Ganesh Marin, who has been working on documenting how that wall has been affecting the movements of bighorn sheep, pronghorn antelope, pumas, deer, even jaguars. So I don't think they're going to have jaguars in the future. There is a push from one organization to come and get jaguars from Mexico and put them there. And I'm sorry, but that is over my dead body. That I'm not going to let happen. They don't have the right habitat there.
So, Rodrigo, in the wall between Mexico and the US, I don't know how advanced it is in terms of the construction, but does it have a wildlife crossing infrastructure? I mean, is wildlife crossing a consideration? Is not?
No. 2 years ago, one federal judge ruled that the wall had to have infrastructure for wildlife passes across the wall, and they have not done it. They have not done it. So at this point in time, it's impossible for those jaguars to go over to the United States. I told them, I said, we had a meeting to discuss whether we were going to give them jaguars or not. I said, no, my friends. What we need to do is we need to join forces. You need to start investing in the conservation of the northern Mexico populations, and then open that damn wall and let the jaguars disperse freely, naturally. And then you're going to have your jaguars back. But we're not going to give you jaguars for a habitat that is far removed from the ideal optimal jaguar habitat.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. It has been a very, very interesting seminar. I don't know if we have one more question, but I think we are. We will have one final question. Let me just, okay, just a quick one. So another from one of our students from Naufal Avicena says, as a scientist, we are very prone to mistakes and bad judgments, I guess, as humans, Yeah. Sometimes we are not confident if our research will be useful or not. How do you build up the confidence to start something out and believe that your research will be useful, especially in the context of early career scientists?
Oh my God, what an amazing question. I love the question.
I think they saw you confident and
let me tell you now, Faye, that we all make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. All I can do is to test the hypothesis again and again and again. And if I make mistakes, I am going to learn from those mistakes. In fact, I keep telling this to my students. We learn a lot more. We as scientists learn a lot more from our mistakes rather than from our successes. A mistake is a very educational process that is going to help you see things that you have not seen before. So don't be afraid of making mistakes. Make the mistakes, learn from them, and then correct the direction of the whatever decision that you're making. But yeah, we all make mistakes all the time.
Thank you, Rodrigo. So I think we will keep it here for this webinar. Thank you very much. It has been really interesting. I think it's very difficult to find people with that history of working in very different systems at big scale with clear impacts, not only for biodiversity, I think also for society. I was very, very impressed with the impact on the Seri community and of course with the agave and the tequila industry. And I think has been very, very kind of inspirational for our students and our audience. So just to the audience, remind that next month we'll have the first Tuesday of August. We have another webinar. The speaker will be announced the next few days. And this happens every month, normally the first Tuesday of every month, normally 4:30 p.m. Beijing time, depending on the time zone of our speaker. Thank you. Special thanks to Rodrigo, who has been very kind to do this webinar very late in Mexico, in a place that he doesn't have good conditions with very unreliable electricity and poor light. So thank you, Rodrigo. And see you next month. So Rodrigo, if you can stay just a moment to have some words, so we can just disconnect the audience, that would be great. Yufe, can you make sure that we can have a quiet chat? Is that okay? So Rodrigo.
Sorry, I need to kick the audience one by one.
Okay. So it's we have a small audience here. It was really cool to see all presentations. When you were talking, I was thinking, oh, I have to ask Rodrigo to write something about this. Oh, I have to ask. So I think it will be really, really good if we can find the time for you to visit, because I think there is a lot of common topics, and it's not worth to go one by one. It's good to spend some quality time. And yeah, I see many potential benefits. You know the importance of